continue to meet, right? Vicki?
Hey, how are you, Jim?
How you doing?
Jimmy, how come you don't have the bedazzled glasses like Becky?
I know, aren't they neat?
I'm sitting there going,
My granddaughter's just all bling, 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 so I got bling, bling, bling.
I'm hearing some
got
echo.
loud
I'm not as much of a fashionista as Becky, so I'm way
Good.
behind.
Do I need to put the blinging out and go with my regulars?
No,
Oh, no.
keep
I don't
the
wanna blind
bedazzled.
nobody.
Yeah.
I'm rocking. Okay, thank you, Mike. I'll tell my granddaughters that.
Sure.
Call the Stokes County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. A joint meeting with the Board of Education. As always, we'll start off with our invocation, and it's Vice Chairman Walker's turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My privilege. Father, we come before you this evening asking for your guidance and your direction as we deal with matters that affect our children and by affecting our children really impact our whole county. We know there's good decisions we can make, and we have a better chance of making them with your help. We ask that you be with those who have any special needs, whatever their situation might be in life, whether they need your protection, your comfort, your guidance, direction, whatever it might be. We thank you for all our blessings. We thank you for the chance we have to meet this evening to hopefully do your work by serving our neighbors. These things we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Please continue standing for our pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Am I the only one eating? I think so.
We've already ate.
Got here quick as I could, had a doctor's appointment.
Mr. Nicholson, I would also like to call this meeting to order, the Board of Education.
Okay.
Thank y'all for having us.
Thank y'all for being here. We appreciate that. All right, start by approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
A motion second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, number two, the presentation.
I will say that the Board of Education would also adopt the agenda as noted. And is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Apologize, Cheryl, first time doing this one right here.
I like Chairman Cheryl's style. Can we
Yeah.
switch you for her?
All right, item number two, the presentation of the Board of Education's budget request. And we got Superintendent Dr. Rice and their Finance Director, Lynette Moore.
Well, basically, we're gonna go through two parts. We'll go through our current expense budget first, and then our capital budget second, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Moore to walk us through the details.
Okay, thank you. We will look at the current expense budget, if you will, in your packet. Looks like this right here. We did not provide all, or did we, Pam, in their budget? Do they have all the detail?
No.
Okay, you do not have all the detail because that's already been given to you by your county up here. So I only done a summary for us to discuss tonight. And if you'll just turn over from the cover sheet. And I just want to talk a little bit about the revenue. And this sheet here shows the amount that was approved in the current year, 18-19. Also, the amount we were requesting based on the budget that the Board of Education has submitted to you all, and then whether it's an increase or decrease. So if you go to the very bottom on the grand total, which would include Poplar Springs and that special funding there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, you can see the actual increase is $958,709. Now, I'm going to bring your attention back to the column to compare 18-19 and 19-20. And you can see your county appropriations increase would be $1,114,417 if this budget was approved as submitted. That is more than the total increase of the budget of $958, and there's a reason for that, because the Board of Education supplies other revenue. If you go down, you'll see fines and forfeitures. For example, we actually projected a $20,000 increase. Interest, we're saying the same. Our Medicaid, the same. Rent, we've upped it a little bit for use of facilities, an additional $3,500. And then on tuition, the board has approved not to charge tuition for students to come to Stokes County, so we would not have that $25,000 worth of revenue. And then we appropriated $150,000 fund balance this past year, or the year we're in now, to balance. And with this proposal right now, we have not included any fund balance. So that's the revenue source. Go to your next page with all the colors on it. And we tried to break it out from what would it cost to maintain, to operate the way we are now, and also what the new request would be. So in the blue section there, you'll see, just to maintain where we're at now, and keep in mind current expenses and operating budget, $488,851. Now, in order to meet that much of an increase, funding needed would be $13,153,633. Out of that, I tried to break down for you to see how much would be county appropriations and how much is the other revenue based back on the revenue sheet that we just discussed. Note in red there, the increase in county appropriations to maintain is $640,351. It's more than your $488, and the reason for that is I just discussed, our other revenue has decreased in our projections. So that automatically forces the difference to go up into the county appropriation line item. So to maintain county-wise with the appropriation, it would be the $640,351. Any questions on that part? Because I know that's kind of hard to follow and understand, but. And then in yellow, you will see what it's actually decreased. We do a projection on actual cost of what happened this year on Poplar Springs, and that's through your special funding transfer from school for SciTech funds. So we are actually asking for a little bit of decrease there. Then in the green, you will see that's where we pulled out our special request, and the board has not put these in priority order. I've only listed them in order according to the way they would fall in the budget as you go through all your detail sheets. And that came to $474,066. So with the blue part and the yellow part and the green, that's how we're coming up to the $958,709 increase. In the red at the bottom, summarizing, total funding needed would be the $13,717,999. Your county appropriations would be the $13,378,699 to maintain, and the new request, it would be an increase of the $1,114,000, and that matches back on your revenue sheet if everything was approved. And then the transfer, of course, from the for SciTech fund, and then our other school system revenue actually comes to $249,000, and that is the decrease of $151,500 that I talked about when we looked at the revenue that goes back up to county appropriations if it were approved the way it's been presented by the Board of Education. I felt like just the summary sheet would give you an idea of, in summary, what the board was requesting, and then you have the detail line item by line item that shows the 18-19 budget. It shows the request and any increases or decreases in those individual pages. Dr. Rice, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think you did a good job with that. Are there any follow-up questions to the current expense, or do you want that in the discussion item 4?
Does anybody have any questions? The board?
One thing I may want to add on green, item 6, it says athletic trainer support. It's actually to be able to hire qualified first responders for athletic events, which is required by High School Athletic Association. We're just having a hard time finding competent qualified people.
Okay, if you will, go to the one that says Capital Outlay Board of Education request. Your second sheet shows the request of $2,012,000. They have put this one in priority order. We have a request from 1 through 26, and you compare that to the budget that was approved this year, it was $1,780,000. So this budget request is actually increasing $232,000. Your third sheet then will show and again, you've received this information, but we just include this sheet here again, the request to let you know in priority order it itemizes the different projects and what makes up the $2,012,000. Dr. Rice, any comments there?
Just because we have several new county commissioners, to let you know how we come up with this. Our maintenance department goes around and looks at each facility. A lot of the stuff that the general public may not see, boilers, HVAC, items like that. They make their list. They also ask the principals to come up with their top 3 items at their schools. Just to let you know, their top 3 items and maintenance request was about $6.2 million in items. We pare that down to what we know that the tax revenues are gonna be around that ballpark, and try to, and look at what are the most critical needs that we have, and then try to prioritize them to match those items. It's nowhere near an all-inclusive list of every item in the school district, but tries to match what the tax revenues are, as well as trying to meet the most pressing needs.
Does anybody have any questions, comments on that? Okay.
The next sheet that you have, is multicolored on here. We also have some roofs that we have some, we know are problem areas, and this spring, we had our maintenance department get with engineers.
The engineer looked at a couple of roofs, but we put a contractor that handles those out roofing repairs, which is AAR Roof, to go around and do a survey of all our roofs across the county.
And that way, to prioritize these roofs in the most pressing needs that need to be fixed in order. Again, this is not all 18 facilities that we maintain, but these are the ones that are currently have some issues. And looking at what we've got in the last few years in capital, we've been using about $1 million a year in roofing. So when you break this out into the highest needs, and then looking at about that same $1 million a year that we're putting into roofing expenses, that comes out to a 4-year projection of when these roofs would be fixed. Again, these items were looked at, and some of them, some patches can get us through another couple of years, but these are issues that we'll be facing. Also, just to throw this out there, it's not on a 4-year plan or whatever, but what everybody considers our newest schools, not Nancy Reynolds and Poplar Springs, but a lot of people will talk about the new high school. West Stokes is 20 years old now.
Wow.
And so that new school that a lot of y'all were around here for, when that opened, is now 20 years old. It'd be about a junior in college right now, if it was born the year that it was born. And based on the square footage from the contractors, that's gonna be about a $2.1 million project when that comes up. And so that, you know, if you look at a roof lasting around 30 years, that should happen around in the next 10 years. So just to put that on your radar, that again, we've not been having issues with that roof, but knowing that the clock is ticking, we wanted you to kind of have that, to know that, you know, when we're looking at these projects and planning about $1 million a year, when it hits that year, that won't fall into $1 million when that comes to you. And so it's not there yet, we're not under a pressing issue, but we did want to let you know that the reality is that building is an aging building as well.
And Dr. Rice, I'd like to add, the one that's on this sheet in yellow, those 2 projects are included in the $2,012,000 that we just discussed. So those 2 are in the request for the current budget.
London is the entire school, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Everything
Entire-
except the gym
entire
building
front
and
building.
maintenance shop.
Yeah, everything you see from the road, including the gym.
Or the maintenance facility.
Any questions about that, or?
Thank you, sir. A lot of information to process, and not asking for second opinions at this particular time, but I'm not sure I'm back up to full speed, so I'm having to pedal a little harder to keep up. So let me start with this basic question, and I'll be asking the same question for our county budget. A lot of people in our county hold themselves out to be conservatives. They want to limit spending. And by limiting spending, they want to give us the best shot possible at keeping a fairly low tax rate. Seems very important. We had 3 people out campaigning this past election cycle, and I bet they heard plenty of times, "Don't raise my taxes." Now, can I look our citizens in the face and say this is truly a conservative budget?
When you look at wanting to prepare our children to be competitive in college and career, I believe so. I don't think you can hamstring an education system and prepare our citizens for life in college and career by going on a bare bones school system.
I think what a conservative, if I'm anywhere typical of one, would be looking for in most situations would be not bare bones to where we're gonna pay a price later for not spending money at a particular time to do what was really needed. Adequate and appropriate needs. And not go through the top on the other end either, but find that kind of middle ground where things are in balance. And I'll have to do more processing and evaluating to look at numbers and compare it to the county's budget, and I'll have that same question for our county budget. But, I appreciate your response, Dr. Rice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Commissioner Morris.
I'd like just to tag on with what Commissioner Walker said. The definition of a conservative varies a lot. You know, skimping and scraping is some people's definition of conservative. Efficient spending, which is sort of what you just described, spend money now so you don't spend more money later, is another definition. So, and I lean toward the efficiency type of definition of conservative, not the simple one that some folks seem to. So I think, you know, that's how I'm gonna apply my judgment to both budgets as we get them.
May I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Morris.
And Commissioner Morris, I may not be that far away from how you described your position. Just got a lot of information to process and see how the pieces fit together in the best way. But I'm not that far, I don't think, from where you described how you see things as far as if we can spend some money now, save some money in the foreseeable future. Certainly might want to consider some of those options.
One more comment.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, and a perfect example of that is fixing roofs before they start leaking. And one other point, you're talking about the amount of information we have to process. I'd like to plant a thought in you guys' mind, that we're not limited to having one meeting with the Board of Education. We get finished tonight, that's fine, but if we don't, then I would be open, if you guys would, if we need to get back together and further discuss things, that'd be fine with me. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Morris.
I'm not sure which chair I need to.
Well,
Here, I'd like to speak. In retrospect to both of your comments, I know I sat on this board 4 years prior, and Commissioner Johnson, Mr. Munhall was the superintendent there, and we had failed to do our due diligence and fund roofing, and we had a project at South Stokes, and we've got another one now. It's this very similar roof. $200,000 to put the roof on now. We had $86,000 worth of mold remediation because we didn't fund it when it needed to be funded. So when I personally looked at this, and the whole school board, we toured everything, we looked at every item. And when we're looking at roofs, the cost of mold remediation was $86,000 this county cannot recoup. We cannot recover from because it is money that we kept trying to put Band-Aids over bullet holes. Well, we're trying to put the roofing and the capital expenses where they need to be so that we don't have those unrecoverable losses that the county sees no benefit from. So that's how this board, I feel, looked at everything. And I commend Ricky for going out and physically looking and presenting roofs. And I know in years past, Commissioner Johnson and I have crawled on roofs, and we've seen what those roofing structures were. The last time the county did a major roofing project for the schools was in the 80s and early 90s. 20-year roofs. We're starting to see the expense of it and of these guys. So basically, yes, it's as conservative as we can be with common sense in the background. Spend a nickel now so that it doesn't cost us $1 later. Thank you.
Very well put.
Is that all for item 2? Is there anything else y'all have?
I'll have something more.
I'm sorry.
I'll have something more.
Okay. Thank you, good. Commissioner Manhoff. Moving on to item 3, the county manager's recommendation, and then have County Manager Jay Copeland.
Mr. Chairman and Madam Chairman, it's a pleasure. I went over the budget, Julie and I did. I want to pass this out to the school board members. I think our members already have a copy.
Thank you, sir.
I think if you don't have a copy, that's what I was looking at.
Well, they all got a copy.
Is that you just handed out?
I can go over this, but I'm sure you that Julia can give you in better detail of how she come up with the numbers on a lot of this. But if you look at the, what our budget, what we done here, is we basically did not, when we had the budget, we didn't have it at the time, we presented to the commissioners. So I gave what was allocated last year, and then gave, what was appropriated for the supplement pay and attached to it at that time. Now we have found out what the actual cost of, or the request from the school was. And we went in and took his request. Now, for the first time, we have seen in your budget what it takes to run, or what it would take to operate your school with just the bare minimum cost, or bare minimum funding. And that was in the $488,000. Now, is it $488,000 or $600 and something? That would be one of my questions to the school board. And what Lynette just said, you said that actually,
To maintain where we're at, for the county part, it would be the 640,351, because our other revenue that we normally put in from the school system has decreased in what we're projecting.
Right.
A little bit over like $151,000. So naturally, that forces that back up into county appropriations, because that's the only other revenue we have.
The 688,851 plus the 151,500 is the 640,351 that she's referring to.
okay, so if you can see here, you'll see 12 million and 51,000. And then you'll see the appropriation of your supplement of 213, then you'll see the 488, and then you'll see the 151. So that should bring you up to the 640 that you was talking about you would need. What we're recommending now is the 12,904. And we're not recommending any of the budget increase as far as the instructional coaches or elementary or middle school social workers or custodian or athletic trainers. Now, athletic trainers, I did not realize that you're talking about actually the EMS personnel.
What it is, under the coaching supplements, we have to, for every football practice at every school, there has to be a first responder on board. They have to be there the entire time, from the time the student hits the field to the time the student hits the locker room. So that's for concussion. And then at every home or away match, at every home game during the winter and spring events, because you don't have as many concussions. But every time you have a basketball or wrestling, you have to have a first responder in case a child gets injured.
And would that be something that's mandated for you?
It's mandated by the High School Athletics Association. Currently, we have a supplement in place. $36,000 was speaking because it was my request to increase it. We have a lot of trouble finding qualified first responders or somebody who's willing to spend the time. And because of the High School Athletics Association will not allow a coach to act as a first responder, you cannot have a dual role. That was a supplement increase just to try to find either a nurse practitioner, even an RN or LPN, just somebody there that is capable of immediate response in case a child is injured, because it could be, in case of concussion, heat stroke, could be life-threatening.
Mr. Chairman, committee, board members, school board members, we did not have that portion in what we are recommending, so that may be something that the two boards want to consider, and our board want to consider, and maybe adjusting for that or not, but.
I have a question, please. Questions for school board member, Mr. Rogers. Does it have to be a paid person? Could it be a volunteer,
He can be a volunteer.
a parent, or someone
A
who?
parent who, it has to be somebody that has gone through the certification process.
Right.
And taking that into account. Now, Dr. Rice has reached out to Wake Forest Baptist to try to find paid positions.
Mhm.
I reached out, fortunately, through my daughter, being at Wake Forest, we're going through health and exercise science to try to get some of those kids that need volunteer hours involved.
Right.
But the problem is, we still have to put teams on the field starting August 1st. Colleges don't come in till the end of August, early September. I did talk to a member of the physical therapy department at Winston-Salem State trying to get some augmentation for those schools, but we haven't pulled that plan together yet. I'm trying to relieve, or we're trying to relieve the burden in years to come by utilizing local assets that may need additional hours. If it becomes a supervisory role where they just we need somebody that's qualified in case nobody shows up, we can still fill that void. But we would love to see 4 or 5 pre-med, pre-physical therapy, physician's assistants, or LPN, somebody going on the nursing track. We'd love to see them come get their volunteer hours with us, because they are by far more qualified than somebody that takes 3 classes online and says, I'm a first responder.
Okay.
So we're exploring both options, trying to come out on the conservative side, but trying to plan for the eventuality that eventually a kid's gonna have a problem.
Specifically to answer your question about can a parent volunteer? If they have those classes, yes, but when you start August 1st and you have practices in the morning before the heat comes in the day, and then you switch to evening practices, and afternoon after school and ball games with travel, you'd have to have a parent that was flexible all of those times, because without them on the field, you're not allowed to practice. So having somebody to be paid a supplement, again, if you look at the hours that's gonna be involved in that, you're talking nickels on the hour, but just trying to sweeten it up a little bit so that somebody would be more willing to spend all those hours out in the hot sun in August, every day, so we could have these sports.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Knox.
Mr. Oakley, quick question. The budget that you have presented to us, and Lynette, you may have to answer this as well, but the commissioners as a whole voted for the local supplement, obviously back in December, I guess it was. Okay, you missed it in March.
June.
We got the gist of it. So my thing is the 213, 231, will that cover the local supplement? Does that take into account any COLAs?
Okay.
I don't think it can take an effect that if the state is gonna get 5% or 10% or whatever they may give to the teachers. I don't think it takes an effect with that goal.
And in order to figure the supplement, I tried to take the amount of salary for the current year, and I tried to do an average of 3% onto that salary amount, and then multiplied it times the 4. Tried to give somewhat of a cost of living on that, so I have tried to adjust that a little bit according to that.
What you put in your budget?
Yes, in our budget,
Yeah.
yes.
What I'm saying is what you presented in ours is what.
113 don't.
Right. 213, 231 does not.
Yeah,
do that.
213, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
This is what was appropriated
Last year.
last year.
Right.
All right, that's all I have.
And what was the difference? Do you know what the actual?
I do, and I'm so proud of this. We were in the hole $88.19, and I was thrilled to death over that, so that was.
88.19.
That's it. That's pretty good, because we had to estimate in December what the second part was going to cost, with people coming and going and that kind of thing, so I was very pleased with that, so we will absorb the 88.19.
Question or a comment? Anybody at the table who doesn't think I'm thoroughly convinced that the supplement was in our last year's budget, our school appropriation, I'd like to talk to them again, if necessary, in private, or if it's the first time, at least have a one-on-one conversation. And I think I can go back and find some information that would validate that I would be glad to show to whoever would like to see it. So it seems to me like we're taking the 12 million and some dollars we appropriated last year, including the school supplement. I don't know, Commissioner Morris might have a comment, but he and I have had
Commented enough on this.
multiple discussions already. And then we're adding a school supplement back on top of it because we gave it again. So that does not seem to be good business. If one of our county departments was funded at a certain level, and then they said, well, fund us again, are we gonna do that for them? I wouldn't think so. So I have, at the very least, mixed feelings about the path we're going down. There always seems to be some little item of contention that comes up after the budget, and I'm just used to dealing with them. It's had gone on for years. But last year, it just seemed to be the school supplement. But when I looked at a list, I think Commissioner Yons showed it too, and I appreciate it. It was number 6 on the school board priorities. And I believe his observation at the time was they had other priorities that superseded the teacher supplement, and it just didn't get down that far on the list. Previous school board member Cox also made reference to a similar situation, similar description. Now, if I'm wrong, I apologize profusely, but it would take a lot to convince me, since I was there at the meeting, and Commissioner Mendenhall's wife was there. I remember a rather heated discussion back during the campaign cycle over that particular issue. If I'm wrong, number one, I'd be very surprised, but I'll gladly apologize and admit that I was wrong. But I just don't think I was. And so we really approved a budget in June that had a teacher supplement in it. And I remember telling all my teacher friends and neighbors and everybody how happy I was for them. Then it was funded again. And now we have the additional funding on top of the original funding, which is included in this budget. But anyhow, as Commissioner Morris stated, we've had multiple conversations, and if anybody can find a way to convince me I'm wrong on this, I'd give them whatever shot they wanted to take at it that they'd like to have. But I'm not thinking it's likely to happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, thank you. Is there anybody else has any questions or comments?
So you are saying that you are not recommending the social worker positions in your budget, correct?
I'm sure that was no, John did not. You didn't do any of those.
No, it's not.
There was nothing done with the new additions, no.
No, ma'am, I did not. Okay, I'm the one who asked for those. I asked for 3 social workers for the county, split up through the county. And Dr. Rice has identified, we've been given a grant for one of those. And then they were gracious enough to include the 2 extra into this budget request. These social workers are desperately needed. We have many, many school districts, and the majority of school districts throughout the nation have social workers in addition to their guidance counselors. The guidance counselors, which we have depleted over the years, and we do have the bare minimum guidance counselors in our county. We don't even have one full-time counselor per school, which is, I can't even believe that we don't have one full-time, one per school. We have over 100 children in DSS custody in this county, as you are very well aware of. We have over 60 children who are considered homeless in our school systems. These social workers would be such a benefit to our children. They would work hand in hand with our guidance counselors, but our guidance counselors do not have the flexibility to leave their campuses. They have to stay there and take care of what are the educational needs of our students there. The social workers are the bridge between the schools and the homes and the communities. These social workers would be the first responders for these ones who are homeless, who are in DSS custody. I can see them working with the DSS staff and helping be a liaison with these children, not just the children who are in DSS custody, but before we can teach a child, we need to make sure that child has shelter and food and a safe environment to live in. And these social workers could help this child and those families find these resources. I've attended several of these collaborative meetings that y'all have in Danbury here with the group of resources that we have. We do have some very good resources inside Cardinal Innovations, all of these, but our guidance counselors do not have, they simply don't have the time to reach out and get all of these resources together for these families, unfortunately. So I feel that this is just a desperate need for our school system to benefit our children, because without those basic necessities, how in the world are we to educate them? And I just ask for your help with that, with the funding, and to try it at least for a year or so and see how those work and how they can benefit our students.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'd like
sir.
to make a comment, but you've allowed me to go first a time or two or so. And if someone else would like to make a comment, I'll follow them.
I believe you're good.
We're not in deliberations yet. So,
I'd like to respond to School Board Member Tedder's information she shared with us. Are you ready for this?
Sure thing.
Totally agree with you. I don't know whether the number is 3 or 2. I was at a juvenile crime prevention. You might have been there. Juvenile Crime Prevention Committee meeting. And that was the topic of that meeting. I think Mr. Rose was there. And I left that meeting feeling like this was a pretty important item to consider. And I can support 2. 3 I'd have to think about, but at least 2.
That's what we're asking for, those too.
Right, and I can support that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else?
It seems as though we're speaking freely. I just, didn't, any other board members have comments or concerns, feel free to chime in.
I'll talk to them.
Yeah.
Mr. Oakley, you?
Well, I did not include the 2 social workers. I didn't know if it was something that you could work more closely with the social service departments here in providing this service through a lot of our MOE monies that's there. Cardinal Innovation being able to step up and handle some of these. So I didn't know if it was something we could work around in utilizing their services more or more efficient that would not allow us to have to hire 2 new social workers. This would be hired by the school board. It would be social workers that are state qualified or that would come in and work closely with the, as you said, the
Guidance counselors.
guidance counselors.
And all those other agencies that you discussed. And I have talked about these positions with several of those agencies, and they all agree that they would be a great benefit to our students.
This would be questions that I would need to refer back to our social service department, Stacy Allen.
Yes, sir, I've talked to her as well, but yes.
What I would need to recommend something like this, because, as far as when it comes to social, the actual needs of someone's mental and physical ability, I would refer to a doctor or nurse or a practitioner for any time before I would make any kind of recommendations on something like that. That's something for the board to consider.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. I guess we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, the joint board budget discussion. We've kind of been doing a little bit already, but go ahead and jump in on this. Who wants to start? Rick?
I'll lead off, nobody else
All
wants
right.
to.
Go for it.
Good to be with you guys tonight. I got a list of things I'd like to discuss, hopefully before we adjourn tonight. Let me tell you that list, and then I'll do a couple of them to stop and let everybody else speak, and then we'll come back to the others later. I'd like to talk about the fund balance level that you guys would like to have in the school system. I'd like to talk about the 4-cent fund. I wrote a pretty lengthy section in my blog about a meeting we had recently with our financial advisor, and the topic was this 4-cent fund and several aspects of it, which I'll get into, and maybe do that last. The information I think you guys need to know and feedback we'll need back from you as we go through and decide what we're going to do with that fund. I'd like to talk about the SROs before we break up, and then, of course, the capital and current expense, which I'll do those two right now. I went through the information that was provided, that Lynette put together, not this latest sheet, but it's basically the same thing. And kind of looked at how she backed up or supported the number, the 640,351 number that's needed to continue or stay as is with the current school system structure and so forth. I would definitely lean toward, I think at a minimum, we gotta keep you guys where you're at. We can't let you go backwards, so, that's pretty straightforward. The point I wanna make that, it's kind of mandatory stuff. It happens, mandatory increases that you don't really have much control over, most of the things she put in the justification. So I think it was well justified, getting to that number of 640,351. On the second part, which is kind of, I guess, the discretionary or the more optional piece that we're going to look at as to what we do with you guys. First of all, we're all aware that we can't, if we give you a pot of money to go into this big green block right here, then it's really up to you exactly how you spend it, because we can't do line item budgeting with you guys. We do purpose and function only. So the way I thought I would describe my thoughts on this block is that there are probably 4 things in there that I'm particularly interested in. So if I'm going to recommend, along with my other board members, some amount of dollars to give you in this green block of these new things that you're requesting, I'll probably take these 3 or 4 things that I think are the most important, add that number up, and try to argue for that number if we have money to give you in this section once we look at our other county requirements and so forth. The things I'm particularly supportive of, number 1 would be the 2 social workers. I've got a lot of direct experience, as you well know, with that, and I would bet you that Stacy supports that, would support that, having social workers that could interact with her folks as well as the other things that Katie was talking about. Tim's data manager probably is something I think is kind of important. I've had that explained to me what that is and the need for some redundancy there in that position. So I think I would probably put that on my second priority. I hate it when we don't have enough custodians to maintain and keep our facilities like they need to be. So I would lean toward that one. And then say 4 of the 7 that I would go for would be, I'd probably do the trainer supplement, but I need to ask a couple questions about that. these are people these are not school employees, right? They are-
Most of them are our school employees right now.
Oh, they
It may
are?
be an off-season coach. Like
Oh,
if there's a
okay.
baseball coach that's willing to do that in the fall, they could do that for football and possibly wrestling. But in the spring, they would not be able to do it because you're not allowed to be a trainer while you're serving in a coaching role at that event.
Okay,
So like, again, a baseball coach, if they didn't have a baseball game, could do it at a softball game, but both in the spring they couldn't. But it could be a current staff member.
so it could be any combination of people as long as they're certified to do
Correct.
it.
Well, Stokes is utilizing one of the nursing instructors is there, which she's more than qualified.
Right.
But when she says, I don't wanna do it anymore, we're like,
Yeah.
what do we do?
How many of them do you have?
We have one at every middle school and one at every high school. So
What's
there's
that equal?
6.
How many is that, 6 of them?
Yes, sir.
And so this 36,000 would get split between the 6?
Between the 6 and we do a fall and a winter.
Oh, okay.
And
Fall,
so,
winter, and spring, so you got 3 seasons.
right.
So it's not a whole lot of money to eat for each one, it's
No.
just something to,
$2,000.
yeah, are you trying to, is the issue just trying to keep enough of them in place?
Trying to keep them there, and when some of our people are getting better, and when they walk away, to incentivize it so somebody's willing to do it. Again, it's a lot of hours.
Okay, well, those 4 items are ones that would be the ones I would lean most likely toward trying to get funding for you guys if we're able to do that. Okay, then to switch over to the capital, if I did my math correctly, what Jake's recommended for capital, you could go through item 19, that's the repair underground steam line boiler room, your boiler room. And so then I just said, if you added another 75,000 to what he recommended, you could do project 20, which is the track foundation, resurface asphalt and so forth. So we're good, I think we're kind of good to go on 19 and maybe 20 of them if we added that little bit extra. I had a couple of questions on the ones that remain though. Like, what is a type A bus? What is that? It said they need a type A bus.
That's one of the shorter buses, with our, whether it's ROTC or our nursing fundamentals class, or when we have to take the special needs kids, the OCS classes out to job sites. A full activity bus sometimes has problems navigating in parking lots and those type areas, so it's the shorter activity bus.
Y'all have any of these already?
We have some at our schools. We've had 2 that have gone down this spring. One's being repaired, another one, I'm not sure that the value of the bus is worth the value of the repair. We're working on that.
Through the generosity of this board, North Stokes and West Stokes both got one last year. This year's, the one at South and the one at Southeastern are the old 6.5 liter diesels. One blew a head gasket, one had a fuel pump leak. They've got 200,000-ish miles on them. So, I mean, the one at South Stokes was down for 5 months. So they had, when they were shuffling ROTC students back and forth from west to south where they share jointly, or the nursing fundamentals classes trying to go back to Danbury to the hospital, back and forth, or golf, tennis, some of the smaller athletic teams were having to drive the large bus with maybe 6 people on it.
Okay.
So it's, and the new one is at 52,000, according to Mr. Langford at the transportation garage, we're going gas, so it's a little
More efficient.
cheaper to maintain, cheaper to operate, so.
Okay, good. Okay, that answered that question. On the number 24, South Stokes house roof shingles and soffits, is that leaking already? It kind of sounds like it is.
It is.
Based on the description.
When you pull into South Stokes driveway, the first thing that you're gonna see when you come in is there's a house there. And that roof is very bad right now. Water's coming in. Mold, mildew is becoming a problem and needs to be repaired.
Is it a house like people live in there?
It's not where the people live in. They use it for clubs and storage and different things. Cheerleaders keep things in there as well. ROTC used it at one point. They're not using it currently. But if we don't fix it, then we're gonna have probably a bigger expense to tear it down. But we don't want the first thing when you come into a building, to a facility, to see a roof caved in on a brick building. That's the first thing you see when you come into the building, which also could become a safety hazard.
At one point, it was a residence, so it's a functional house. Just not.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, good.
So, Mr. Moore, you're going with number 24?
I'm gonna think about it, yeah. I'm just going. Yeah, I mean, you already taken care of everything. I would probably for sure go through the first 20 and then, based on our discussion, what the rest of the board wants to do, the merits of these other ones, but things got a leaking roof on it. Usually moves up the list a little bit with me. And then on the last one, number 26, is monitoring blind spots on the campus. Is that blind spots where kids are at, or?
In the building, yes, sir.
Okay. It's the last priority, but it seemed like it's a safety thing.
There's lots of needs, so there's a lot of angst putting together this list, and every time you move something else up, and then you look at it and you say, well, really, is that not a need too? There's a lot of needs, and we believe they're all justified.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's all I have really on, that's my thought process on both current expense and the capital. Which will resolve a further discussion.
Right.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I do have one question for you real quick on the one, number 25 at Piney Brew, repair access to road to well house. Is it not accessible now?
I can answer that.
Okay.
It's accessible now. We just got some washed areas, the ditches have filled in over time. This would come in, we had a contractor come up front just to regrade everything and riprap the ditches and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Don't have nothing to do with that pond, does it?
No, sir.
How much longer do you think the road would last without repairs?
We could probably manage another year.
Thank you.
Barring another massive storm.
Right, that's true. We did get a lot of rain this past year, didn't
We'll use it until we can't.
we? Yeah.
I'll speak next.
Hey, Commissioner Yelts.
So I'll follow Commissioner Morris's lead here and go with the current and the capital as well. So current expense, I mean, I'm in favor of keeping you guys whole, obviously. There are a few items down in the green that I would also entertain. But the bigger thing that I'd like to know from you, Lynette, is what that difference is going to look like in the teaching supplement. So obviously, again, the number that Jake put in was the same number that matched what you had last year.
All right, I've actually shown an increase without Social Security and retirement, just the supplement itself, of $64,814.
Okay.
Now, I would have to add the matching Social Security and retirement to that. Does that answer what you're asking me?
Yes, so
Okay.
we go from the 213, or, excuse me,
231.
213, 330, or 231, up 64,000 on top of that, right?
And times 7.65 and the 20.43% for the matchings is what we're talking about,
Okay,
So another 18,000.
roughly, probably, close to that.
so 82 on top of that is to keep that whole, which, you know, I'm on record as saying I wanted to keep it whole, 4 cents. I don't want to put you guys in a situation where you're looking at having to cut that again this year by any means, so,
As far as they're up to date, what they're being paid currently at this year.
The
Yes,
full
ma'am.
4%.
Full
supplement.
4%. Yes, sir.
correct. So again, in my priority list, a little undecided on instructional coaches and how you guys are planning on utilizing that. That's something I'd like to talk to you about, maybe within the next week or so, see what your plans would be there. And then the instructional supplies, I know that's always a need in the school, so it's kind of where I stand on the current. The capital, I'm in favor of Mr. Oakley's recommendation of what you had last year, and then in addition, I'd not thought of it in the way that Commissioner Morris had presented, but for another 75,000 to track it west, so that everyone knows,
That's 175.
that an additional
An additional
75,
That's what was recommended.
you know, to get you, in other words, 19 plus 75 would give you enough to do that. So that being said, I think everyone needs to understand that Chestnut Grove, they were holding their track meets there at West. Now they can't.
West Stokes has not hosted a track meet in 3 years due to safety concerns. Every time it rains, the asphalt's so degraded underneath that it's actually seeping underneath on top of the asphalt, underneath the rubber surface, and comes up, and he said it's the world's largest waterbed. It's literally floating 3 to 4 inches.
It becomes a floating surface.
Yeah, it becomes a floating surface.
Okay.
And
What
so-
isn't floating is missing.
And so to clarify what you're saying, Chestnut Grove or West Oaks has not had a home track meet in 3 years.
Okay. Okay. It'd be interesting to know how much we have spent on travel in the past 3 years just because of all of the events being away. I
And
mean,
the gate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, lost revenue.
Lost revenue at the gate as well,
Schools, yeah.
certainly. So that's something I would certainly entertain. And then, I am in consensus with Commissioner Morris again in the fact of a roof, and I know we
Come up with that through
what you spend your money on.
19.
I've been in your
And that's,
there, so I know how that goes, but I would like to see us, anything that's safety related, such as the cameras and the roof, I would support that as well, but again, you guys would have to decide.
And in regards to the South Stokes roof, I encourage you, when you're out tooling around the county, go over to South Stokes, turn left at the house, and just look at the back side of the house, and I think it's pretty evident what the issues are. I mean, you don't have to get out, you don't have to go in, you just look at the gutter, and this is shingles exposed with wood.
So that's all I have.
Commissioner Alex. Commissioner Mendenhall?
I prefer to go last.
What if you don't have any time left?
I'll yield it all to you.
We'll do a second meeting.
Yeah, no. You want to go me?
Your choice.
Okay, I'll let you go
All
first.
right,
That gives me a 20-minute break.
more time to collect your thoughts. I got you. At one time, both the county and school board,
being seven.
administrators and school board, our folks and your folks, did a 5-year capital plan.
It would be 7,000.
I like that. Instead of getting hit by a pretty good assortment of things each year, we could sort of have some progression and say, well, this year, this is at the top of the list, next year's likely to be these items. So I would hope at some point we could get back to that. I don't have the time or energy anymore to go to all these places. I commend you folks, Board Member Rogers and others, you guys, who've actually put eyes on these and did your evaluation, personal evaluation of the needs. And when I see capital needs, one thing from our perspective, or my perspective really, is how does the school board's capital needs compare or line up with the county's capital needs? And, you know, we have priorities too with the county, we have limited funds, we can only stretch them so far. Somebody asked me how much I wanna give to the school board, my answer is always the same, all we can. Give the school system all we can, in balance with the county's other needs. That's the only fair way I know to do it. So, part of the process I see us going through is to look at the school's request and look at the county's needs, look at where the citizens are on the issues as much as possible, don't want to exclude them, and just see how we can best get the pieces to fit together. Let me just toss out one thing, and I know our time's limited, I don't want to go over the 20 minutes.
I appreciate that.
SRO officers, I have a real challenge with this aspect of it. I have for years relied on our sheriff's input, heavily regarded his views towards school security. Matter of fact, I defer to him almost totally in how he sees the school security needs. He does not, to the best of my knowledge, and somebody correct me if they have knowledge counter to this, but the sheriff does not support, to my knowledge, the additional SROs. Jake, is that correct?
That's what he related to me when I asked him about what needed to be done. Now, what he did, he said he did go with it, there was gonna be a staggered system to where he put so many on this year and then so many on the next year.
Right. Well,
He did not recommend it.
what the sheriff seems to have consistently and steadfastly supported is using all the current available technology for security. Doors that need a buzzer on it and camera and those types of things to beef up security as much as possible with the technology we have available today. And I support, my preference probably would be in that direction. There's certain things on here I'm not sure I understand, but I don't really feel like there'll be enough time to get my understanding to where I'd like for it to be. I'll just toss out one. This Johnson Controls upgrade, now I remember when Johnson Controls came on the scene and they were supposed to save us a bunch of money and painted a really pretty, you're chucking, Mr. Superintendent, you have memories too.
Well, I wasn't here when it started, I'm just dealing with it now.
Right. So now I'm sitting here looking at, just to do a current version of the control system is $108,000. Now, what would we get in return for that? Is that just to keep schools operating, or what happened to Johnson Controls and all these things is supposed to be so good for us and save bunches and bunches of money? It didn't pan out, obviously, from the expressions I've seen.
Well, they came and did a presentation, and it's hard to prove cost aversion when they said that they went in and made changes that kept us from having to spend this much money on electric bills.
Okay.
The only way to prove that, if you will, would be to have two buildings, one with the Johnson Controls and one not, and then see what the end-up cost would be.
Good observation.
But they showed their projections of what they did and what they believe we've saved through the years has been substantial savings. That was their presentation. We'd be happy to send it to you. I think we have that, correct? And I didn't bring that with me to speak with the particulars of it. But at this point, we have their controls. It's having problems speaking to the computers so that we can make them work. And so if we don't do an upgrade, we're not gonna be able to have our systems taught. And we're gonna be in a situation without being able to control our heating and air.
Dr. Wright, can I add a little bit?
Sure, go ahead.
A good way to explain that, it's like a computer. All this is digital now. Through our control system, I can have a laptop here if I've got internet. I can look at every classroom in Stokes County with the exception of Nancy Reynolds, except on a different control system. We look at computers that are 8 years old, they're considered outdated. This version of our Johnson Controls is the same way. It's the licensing on it is ran out, and we have to go with a different, Johnson Controls is going with a different company. So that's what we're upgrading. Some of our controls can be upgraded, some of them are going to have to be replaced, and that's what this $108,000 includes.
Good, thank you. I'll go with that. I'd like to address fund balance briefly, if I may also. I've been viewing fund balance, our fund balance as your fund balance also. And our fund balance backs up your fund balance. And I'll put that in perspective, and Rick, you were manager, I think, for a time or two, and we dipped into our fund balance to take care of things that came up mid-year or mid-budget cycle. Even though we didn't overly fund the school's fund balance with our appropriation, we stepped up to the plate when needed, as needed, without fail, to the best of my knowledge. I don't think we've ever denied what proved to be a legitimate request. So even though, I guess, Ms. Moore, what is your fund balance now?
The audit reflected that as of this past June 30th, we had $197,127 that we did not appropriate. Now, you noticed we appropriated $150, that's excluding that. So then, whatever we have left here at June, and that's a pure estimate, I would say we will have somewhere between maybe 100, 150,000 from this current budget. But the 197 was not assigned, so that's still sitting out there like a fund balance for us. So right at $200,000.
Well, even that 200,000 seems fairly lean for the size budget you guys have.
The key to that, in my opinion, is when you have a fund balance that small, as long as it's understood that if something does happen emergency-wise, that we might have to come back to you all. That's the thing we have to keep in mind when it's that small amount.
Help me with this. I've asked Commissioner Morris for his views, and he concurred with mine. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And do you recall any instance when we not stepped forward and felt for the urgent need?
No, sir, I'm not aware of that, but we've not had to do that much either. I mean, that's the good part of it. So, yeah, we have not had to, yes, sir.
Is that 20 minutes?
You're getting close, but 19 minutes and 36 seconds.
Go ahead. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Nicholson, I'd like to request a 5-minute break, please.
That's fine. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Come back after that.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, what do you think?
Oh, yeah.
This yours? You gonna kick that out of here or leave it going?
Afraid to hit any buttons on it.
That's like mine. I got 2 or 3 of those things, and I'm not careful.
to let you
Well,
know.
I was set up.
I said, you and Daddy, and he said, yeah. That's good.
They got her shoes.
Overcoming a problem is a big
Yep.
deal.
No, put it back over there.
I'm just not ready to overcome yet.
It's coming now.
I missed that.
To the first one to admit that you have, or to overcoming a problem is to first admit that you have it.
Oh, okay.
I keep a list of my books.
My wife reminds me of my list.
My wife adds some things to my list too, I think.
We're not muted no more.
No, no more muting. I gotta do something with the camera angle, but you can go.
We can go.
Huh?
Okay. Call the meeting back to order. Before we went to break, I just had a couple of questions for you, right here in the green box. The number 1 and 2, elementary and middle school instructional coach. Can y'all define that for me?
I'll let Mr. Rose get into the details of it, but when I met with my principals and I talked to them about the needs of our schools, this was the number 1 thing that they jumped on in a heartbeat. We had these positions and we cut them in previous budgets to try to balance the budget. And we did it through attrition when somebody had resigned, retired, whatever, and we just didn't refill them to balance the budget. Our schools have felt these cuts, and I'll let him get into what they feel and what they do.
And one thing I will point out, with the addition of a middle school instructional coach, in the past, we had actually had one for each of our middle schools at the time. That continued to get cut, and now we're down to one, running between all 3 middle schools, and it is an overwhelming task. But when we look at our instructional coaches, they are basically a non-evaluative position to help with teacher development. Okay, so your principals are going to take care of the evaluation. The teacher coaches help to implement all of the professional development that we're sending them to. They take on additional professional development for things like reading foundations, math foundations, and then they'll come back and train our teachers. The other thing that they are extremely integral in, they'll help us with our professional learning teams. As a principal, you're going to get called away from meetings with building managerial tasks. We know that's going to happen. They help to run EBOS numbers for teachers to show them where their numbers are, and then they'll work with them on strategies to improve their actual teaching practice. A lot of times professional development will be a sit and get type thing. They add the ongoing professional support to see that our professional development actually happens.
Also, as the state rolls out new curriculums, they help with that. This past year, we rolled out a new math curriculum. Next year, language arts curriculum comes out. When those things come down from the state has cut a lot of their support for that. And so we can't send people to regional trainings like we used to. Now, we can send a person to get trained, a small group, and then they come back and help facilitate that in the rest of our schools. So when we say a teacher coach, that's literally what it is it helps our current staff to get better to serve our students.
Okay, thank you. And how many do you currently have working here in the schools?
We have 1 middle school and 4,
Wrong.
well, it's kind of a hybrid because we have,
3 who are
We have
actually instructional.
4.38, because you have a prorated in 2 slots.
right.
Yeah.
And the way we have that is we have people that serve as part-time teacher coaches and part-time assistant principals in 2 of our schools. So those 2 schools get taken care of, and then the others take care of the rest of the district, the other 9 elementary schools. They have 3 schools each.
Thank you. Said, I don't think I really had any more questions. I've seen the rest of it on the Capitol. And I agree with Commissioner Morris and Commissioner Johnson, what they said on getting the 1 through 21, just another 75,000, is that correct?
Yeah, to get to 20, get to 20 is when I check my math on it too, correct.
Also looks like there is a couple more, which of course, as I was told before, we don't tell y'all what to do with the money, we just give it to you and let you do your project. But, that's all I have. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Mendenhall.
Thank you. It's good to see everyone today. gonna start out by saying that every time that we get together for our joint meeting, I feel like there are positive interactions between the commissioners and the Board of Education, and we appreciate that. This is my third budget on this end that I've gone through. And I feel like that, we've worked hard to, increase the previous board and this board to increase, both current and capital over the past 2 years. And I just jotted down a couple of things here on the amounts. Fiscal year 17-18 budget, we garnered up to $10,968,860, which was an increase of $1,151,520. And then last year, we bumped it up to $12,135,559, which was another increase of $1,176,699, which was a 10.73% increase. On capital outlay, the first year I was on board, we bumped it up to $1,500,800, and then last year we bumped it to $1,780,000. What I just wanted to bring forth there is that we might not have got to quite where y'all passed, but there was an increase each year. You know, we didn't keep you where you were at, and we didn't go backwards. We moved forward. And I hope y'all have the same numbers. I mean, y'all are involved in this. And so, and I wanted to also add that we felt like Commissioner Walker and I above, who this is, Jimmy's been on a long time, but this is my third one. We feel like that we have come through for y'all in the last 2 or 3 years with 2 or 3 vital things. One was y'all came up and asked us for the art teachers. And we got the art teachers for you that year. And 2, the first year when we gave you the capital outlay of $1,500,800, you were able to put there in the gyms at South Stokes and North Stokes, which was y'all's decision, that we did give you enough money to do that happening. I want you to know that. I don't know if y'all are hearing a lot of positive things, but we do, about having the area.
I say it every time I walk in the spring. Thank you.
And, you know, while I was principal at North Stokes, I know how many times I sweated doing volleyball and all those things. So you were able to get that accomplished. And then this year, our new board, when they came on, we were able to get you supplement, full supplement one time. So I think some major things have been accomplished in the last 3. This is our third budget I've been a part of. And I wanted to bring that home to let you know that we are not your adversaries. We are trying to work as a team with you. So I wanted to put those things out there, out front. And going back to Johnson Controls, Dr. Hobbs probably is sick he ever brought that forward, but Ricky and I had a lot of issues with that at the level we were at. I wanted to address the capital outlay, though, that we had to deal with. Unfortunately, due to some federal guidelines and things during the time that I was superintendent, I had Becky, Mike, and Jamie on board. And, you know, a lot of things went, you know, you had hold harmless and a lot of different things came through during those years. But if, we have a copy here of how much we got for capital outlay the years I was superintendent, and it was $230,500 in 11-12. $320,000 in 12-13, $329,642 in 13-14, and $600,000 in 14-15. And I just wanted to show the discrepancy of, you know, you know, 1.5 million and then the 1.78 million. So it was quite a advantage, so just wanted to bring that to your attention. I love children, and everybody at this table that knows me knows that. And I know the board members, and I know how much they care about the children and the teachers and the students, parents, and or they wouldn't give up their time. You know, this is a time consuming thing for everybody at this table. Everybody, you don't have 30 or 40 people running. I mean, the people that are here because they love what they do and they're trying to do a good job. I just wanted to re-emphasize those things to y'all, that we feel like we have worked with you, like you are, and 3 budgets is about 3 budgets. Yes, sir. Y'all realize that we have pushed the bar up, especially on capital, and when you go over $1 million increase on current. In some city systems or something, that might not be a lot, but in Stokes County, when you go over $1 million increase in current, that's a lot in Stokes County. And just wanted to go back and reemphasize for our board and myself personally, and Jimmy's been on the board. Now we've got me, Jamie, and Rick. And I feel like Jake put out a good budget, a very comfortable, certainly supporting the budget. I see the new items on the green phase here where you've got social workers, the coaches, and custodian, athletic trainers, school operations. And of course, I'm very familiar with all those. Could you use every one of them? Probably so. Are we gonna be able to fund every one of them? You know, I don't know. I have to go through our discussion process. You know, I just want to make sure that y'all understand that if, I don't know how our final tally will be, but I feel like we've worked extremely well with y'all in the past. Sometimes it comes to a point though, that you got to sort of cut. I mean, I'm not saying go backwards, but sort of put a stopping point on how much we increase it. And, I just to remind myself of a couple of my friends that I've talked to, Travis up in Surrey County and Rodney in Rockingham, and I looked at their ADM and how much they were getting. I feel real good about what we're giving to y'all with, what they're getting in Rockingham and Surrey with their ADMs. Is certainly, I don't know if y'all have that copy, but I really agree. I just want you to know that every board member here takes this serious. And I know them well enough that we will work hard to try to give y'all a workable budget that is the children of this county. That's not all I have to say at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Shirley, we want to see if the board has anything?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. I guess, I would first just like to say that, we have definitely put this, and Dr. Rice, and with the board's review, these capital requests together. As you can see, they all are either, security-based or safety issues. So again, I just feel like we've definitely tried to prioritize these and be transparent and clear, and we'll definitely continue to answer any questions or concerns, but definitely safety and security needs as far as lots of these requests. And again, like Mr. Mendenhall said, I am thankful for the positive relationship that, both boards have and the time and effort put in by both boards, because it is a lot of work and tough decisions, and we thank you all for your time. And looking at the current expense budget, of course, I'm in favor and can say that we do need or could benefit definitely from all these items in the green. Me personally, a strong item that I'm, particularly interested in is also, social workers. I do see where they can bridge that gap with the need in the county. Maybe our county is overwhelmed with responsibility in the social worker department, and these positions can just help fill that within the school system and help those students, if we have concerns weekly or monthly, whether it's, neglect or either a family not, being aware of services that they would qualify to further help them. I do think the social workers can definitely help our students and staff. Also, the increase in school instructional operational supplies. I know it's number 7, but to me it's important as far as, directly affecting our classrooms and alleviating that burden of supplies to our staff. A lot of comes out of their pocket as well as families, so anything there to help with operational instructional supplies. Again, everything is definitely needed, the athletic trainers and the TIMS data manager, and all these positions could benefit from. But again, I just thank y'all for having us here, and I do agree with Mr. Morris as far as, a second meeting, if there's further questions, or, once you guys review things and kind of look at it more closely. I think the board, I don't think there's any golden rule that says we have to only meet once, so, a second time, I'm favorable if you all are. And again, thank y'all. Ms. Bowles?
I want to appreciate everything that y'all have tried over the years to help us with as far as with our kids. I know that students, they're our future. We want to make sure that they're educated, and we want to make sure they have good teachers to do that. And we want to make sure that our teachers have the best available sources to be able to utilize, like with the teacher coaches. I know it's very hard to be able to give everybody everything they want, but I know that Dr. Rice he worked really hard to make sure that each school was able to be part of the capital outlay budget so that they could get something, because every community wants to feel like, they're being considered, that they're important, their needs of their school is important. But I know as a conservative republic, when you say conservative, that don't mean cheap. That means that if a roof is leaking, you need to fix it, because that means everything below that roof is gonna be having issues, and that's more cost, that's a greater expense. But the young people that's in the school, or your high school people, they need to be in a safe and secure environment. I know we appreciate everything y'all have done in the past. We appreciate everything that you're gonna be doing for us this time. But I believe that we all are working together for the students, for our communities. And I hope that as far as our current expense, that what we've got in green, that you'll seriously consider it, because we feel that it's very important. Guidance counselors are very important. Social workers are very important. Our custodians are very important. There's nothing that's not important, but I know you have other things that you have to look at within the county that you have to consider too. But I appreciate this time that you've met with us. And like Cheryl says, maybe we can get together again at another time. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna read mine because I didn't want to leave anything out. Well, first of all, I do want to thank the county commissioners and the county manager
for giving us the opportunity to speak with you on behalf of the students, parents, and employees of the Stokes County Schools. I'd also like to thank you for your support to fund our real 4% supplement and our request that the supplement be retained. As a board, we've worked diligently to submit a budget for current expenditures and capital outlay that will best serve our students and personnel. I would like to say, with the state mandate for class size, we would like to be able to keep our local teaching positions to be able to maintain the programs we're currently offering. Our current expense budget is our operating budget for the upcoming school year. This budget maintains our current programs such as utilities, insurance, social security, retirement increase, contracted services, charter school reimbursements, legislative salary increases, and the list can go on and on. These increases are something we have no control over and necessitate our request for increased funding for current expenditures. These are some new requests in our current budget that I would ask that you please consider. The 2 social workers, the 2 additional teacher coaches, Tim's data position, and 1 additional custodian, because right now London and South Stokes are sharing a custodian. I feel these, also the athletic trainers supplement and the increased school instructional operational supplies. Right, I feel these changes would help move our schools forward. In our capital outlay budget request, we had lots more needs than we actually requested. Each school principal was asked to only submit 3 requests each. We are limited to just maintaining our school's capital needs at this point, and often have to pick and choose the greatest need as we go down our list of school needs. I would also like to ask the county commissioners to help in providing more resource officers for our schools. Safety, as you are well aware, is paramount in the minds of every parent of school-aged children. Most parents want a full-time resource officer in each of our schools. If additional funding becomes available, we would like to see resource officers in all the elementary schools. As a board, we have approved the purchase and installation of intruder stops in our schools this school year. This is another positive step we've taken to make our schools more secure. I want to thank you for your time in hearing and addressing the needs for our Stokes County schools. Thank you. Very good, Pat.
I don't have anything written, so I'm just gonna speak off my notes here real quick. Thank you for supporting those 2 positions, giving your first go-round on support of those 2 social worker positions. That means that I'm just touched that you would agree to those, right at this point in your deliberations. It's just very important that we maintain our current level. Of the 5 board members here, a couple of us have worked in the schools before, and I'm the last one out of the schools, and these requests, you're talking about, helping us fund 20 of the 31 we brought to you, 26, excuse me. We had 91 requests brought to us to narrow the list down to y'all, and some of these are extremely modest requests from our schools that we didn't even make in our cut to y'all. The average age of our schools, Ricky, what would you say that is?
I really don't know right off the top of my head, but I do know we have some facilities that were built in 1957 that we have students in.
And, I mean, it was news to me when we toured these schools that we have to hire painters for these elementary schools. At the high school level where I worked, we painted our own rooms in the summertime, so we're on breaks. And I was like, well, why can't they do that in the elementary schools? But they have to hire licensed painters who are specialize in that lead abatement and things like that. So they can't do that on their own. I'm sure they would, but we've toured all these schools, and I don't know if you guys have been to these, but they look sad. Some of them look very, very sad. And these other small things like the paint that we didn't even ask for would mean so much to these places. And so we are asking for very modest increases here, and not even things that would brighten the day of the children as they walk through the doors. But we talked about fund balance. We don't have a fund balance. I mean, 200,000. That's nothing. We have no bargaining tool. We can't match grants when our staff, our directors and their staff ask for grants, and they very successful in getting some things to benefit our schools. But to get other grants that we could apply for, I mean, we can't apply because we have no collateral to do that. Supplement, please consider continuing that at the level, at the current level. As a former, as like the last teacher out from the board here, that meant a lot to our teachers, and thank you so much. But to maintain it would, or to not maintain it would be demoralizing and a slap in the face of our teachers, I think, for the hard work that they do and that modest amount of supplement compared to other districts in the state. Ours is very modest, so please consider keeping that current. So our teachers do feel valued, so they can do the best job for the best interest of our students every day. Thank you very much.
I should have wore pink so Jimmy and I would be color coordinated. Nothing against you, Janet. You wouldn't be able to recognize the color.
Maybe next time.
Because you and I seem to be the one that's carrying on a lot of the conversation. This is my 5th board budget joint section. And this is refreshing, because the last 4, we were fighting to get $250,000 for capital expenses. We started in 2010, when Commissioner Johnson and I were on the board, with a $1.1 million fund balance. And every time something happened, we got a $250,000 for capital expense, so we had to draw it down just to keep the fingers in the dike, because everything was leaking. The biggest hit was the $300,000 in South Stokes roof, because the commissioners at that time didn't fund any roofing projects. Well, and like I said earlier, we were $86,000 upside down. We're tight with our money. We lost a van in Hurricane, which Michael was it? And it had already been taken out of service, but it was better than anything we had. And then we lost it, and it had 200-some thousand miles. It had nice ventilation because the rust out holes, from the road came up, kept the air circulating inside. I don't know what it did for the carbon dioxide. But I make that as a point that y'all have been extremely generous, and we are when I heard that we got $1.5 million in capital last year, I thought it was raining manna from heaven. I was like, wow, what have we improved? But then you look back at why we're needing this. We have six elementary schools that used to be high schools, dating back to the 50s, between King, London, Sandy Ridge, Pine Hall, Wilsonville, and Pinnacle. They all have roughly 70-year-old facilities or building structures somewhere on the facility. So we're trying to take care of them. That's the reason with 30% of our schools, because we only have 19 schools, one of them we lease, so it's 30%. Or 70 years old, we've got to take care of them, but they're well-built buildings. There's nothing wrong with them. We just need to give them the TLC to bring them up, to make them viable for the next 20, 30 years, is all we're asking for. With that being said, of a $2.1 million budget, $900,000 is tied up with just 2 roofs. 2 structures that the newest one turned 53. So it's not like it's a new puppy around the block, and it will be a standing seam roof. So it's got another 30 years on it, and it's our 2nd largest high school. So, I mean, we're spending
county's money as wisely as we can, as conservatively as we can, with the intent that we need to decide, what's the cost to maintain? Because when I looked at London and it was $700,000, and I'm like, well, what would it cost to just build something new? And then I remembered it was almost 16 million to do Poplar Springs. Now, something on a smaller scale, you know, say you combined a couple of schools and, you know, everybody looks and says, well, this school could hold more because its core capacity is larger. But to put the extra building at Southeastern was $6 million. It's easier to justify, to me, 700,000 in a roof than 6 million in a new facility just to go on and overcrowd another facility. So consolidation, moving around, the numbers, although they may seem grand, we haven't built a lot of schools in Stokes County because we've got great schools in Stokes County. We just need to maintain them. We've got boilers at South well, they're working, they break, they're obsolete, but they've given us 40 years worth of service, so it's hard to complain. And it's like the Maytag guy, I guess, runs forever. Kind of like me and Jimmy when we get to talking, so I'm gonna cut it off there. But I will say this, we appreciate everything you've done, we appreciate the openness. I've worked with, you know, 3 or 4 y'all in the past, and learning, you know, how to work together has been awesome. We thank you, we're open. If y'all wanna come see a school, call me, Ricky, we'll get the ladder. It better be strong because I'm getting fat. That pizza was good, but the chocolate was bomb diggity. So, don't tell Christy I had any, please. But thank you.
She might be right.
I live in one of those underserved areas of Stokes County.
There you go.
I can see high-speed internet. It comes to a pole in the middle of the farm.
Yeah,
I'm
there you go.
having to get on it.
She's somewhere where she can see it, I'm sure.
And she's like, how do you say? Okay. If y'all have any questions, please ask us.
One thing that was mentioned earlier about county needs, including the schools. I've heard that there's potential of a 5-year plan here with the county with a building assessment. I would love for our buildings to be included in that. I don't want to say we want to work on one school at the expense of a fire department. I would love for one set of eyes to look at county buildings and school facilities. That way, when we come together, we're not dealing with our contractors' numbers versus y'all's contractors' numbers and having discrepancy. I do see this as one big thing. Again, I'll warn you though, it may be a big number. When you look at the Sandy Ridge Pinnacles that have 50 or 60-year-old windows in it, was in one the other summer when they were getting ready to do some painting around the windowsills and they had the pressure washer, and we had to move all the books to the other side of the room because the room was getting wet because the windows wouldn't hold water out of the building. And so between window replacements, paint that's been in some buildings for 30 to 40 years, parking lots that have been sitting at high schools for 50, 60 years that are breaking up, there's a lot of needs coming, and I don't want anybody to be surprised either. We've been, I know, Mr. Mendenhall, I don't know how you slept at night with looking at a $250,000 capital budget with 15, 16, 17 facilities. I don't know how you slept at night. It's hard to sleep at night thinking of 1.7 with 19 facilities, 18 that we maintain. So I don't know how you did it. It's the weight of that was overwhelming on you, and I can't imagine. I mean, you probably had black, full, wavy hair when you started. But mine's getting grayer every day, and I didn't have it to lose, so I don't have to worry about that. But I can't imagine what you dealt with for those 6 years. And so, but because of that, he was not able to meet needs in 50-year-old facilities then. Well, now I've got 55-year-old facilities, and I'm trying to plug those holes as fast as we can. And we're working to do that. But there is a major need out there beyond what this is. HVAC units that are supposed to be last 20 years are running on 30 years. When they go out, we're gonna be in a world of hurt. And so And even when fixing these good bone buildings, you still got plumbing that's 60 years old in them. Electrical wires that are 60 years old in them. So I would relish the chance to say, could we be a part of this facility study so the whole county's on equal footing? Because it is all one county. And again, if my house catches on fire, I want good fire equipment coming to it. And so I understand all the needs. And I would love to be all in one study to see where we are and see what the real needs are. And I know that some of that capital money was due to debt because it was paying off debt at the time. You notice we've not asked for a new facility because, to be honest, it scares me to death to think about spending $15 million for an elementary school, or $25 million for a middle school, or $75 million for a high school that are out there, because I think then we're gonna be on a $200,000 budget again for the next 20 years. And these 70-year-old buildings can't make it on that. So if we were to build a facility to take care of a need, everything else would suffer for 20, 30 years. And with 50, 60-year-old buildings, we don't have 20 years. So I would appreciate being a part of a full county study to look at that. I would absolutely appreciate that opportunity.
Madam Chair, could Dr. Rice speak to the pending legislation about where they are wanting to allow teachers to have $300 and how that could cripple us?
Mr. Mendenhall, I don't know if you've kept up with this, but this will let you know my sleepless nights. Where instructional supply money has come to the district based on your ADM, they are now looking at not giving it to the district, but giving it to individual teachers, $400, $300, depending on which budget you look at. Well, when you take that out at $400 for roughly 600 teachers, that is a huge chunk of money that comes out of that. Well, and I understand what they want to say, because teachers do spend their, I mean, my wife's a teacher, I know what she spends on things at times. And so I understand the need, but they're taking out of what we leverage as a district. We buy paper by the truckloads at a cheap price per packet. But you give a teacher a $400 gift card and they go buy one pack of paper at Walmart, they're not they're not gonna have the buying power that we do. We're not gonna be able to pay for copy contracts. We're not gonna be able to pay for all of those type things because they're taking that money away from us to give it to teachers individually, which again, sounds like a good thing, but it has a negative impact. The other thing that Mr. Mendenhall, and I know Mr. Yance knows this, DPI funds us as if we are one building. They look at us as if we have 5,800 students sitting in one facility. And so when they say, well, you get assistant principals, one for every 750, that would give us 7.5 assistant principals. Well, we have 10 because we have 3 traditional high schools, 3 middle schools, a couple of larger elementary schools. We have 10. So we have to come up with those extra numbers because of our alignment with having 19 schools. And I think if you ask any of us around this table, if you gave us a blank slate, would we want 19 schools? Probably not. It's not the most efficient model we've got, but it's what we have. Again, these decisions were made 50 years ago, not what we're dealing with now. The class size laws that you may hear about on TV and stuff, they are limiting the number of kids that you can put in a classroom. In a couple of years, it's gonna be 16 in first grade, a hard cap of 16. Where used to, you could have if you had 48 kids in a school, you could have 2 classes of 24 each. Now you're gonna have 3 of 16. And that sounds easy. The problem is, what if you have 17 show up at Pine Hall? Now we have to have 2 classes, and we have class sizes of 8 and 9. Well, they're not gonna fund you for that. They're gonna fund you as a district to look at what your overall number is. If you had 160 first graders, you'll get 10. Then you figure out how to put 10 teachers in 11 schools. So those are the kind of challenges we're facing. Yes, I realize the budget numbers go up. If you'd asked me 20 years ago that you're gonna ask for $1 million more, I would've been, what, $1 million? Lynette, a couple of years ago, when I came 3 years ago, do you remember what retirement was then? It was about 16%?
Less than that, probably, yeah, it was less than that.
14.7 maybe. Now it's up to close to 20%.
We're projecting 20.43% for next year.
We all know what our power bills have done. We realize we're losing enrollment, but the expenses that we have no control over a lot of them. We don't have control over saying, nope, we're only gonna pay 15% retirement. We have to pay 20. We don't have control over our electric bills, our gas bills, the funding formula for buses. So those, it look like increases, but those are fixed cost increases that we cannot control. And so the answers are, do we not serve kids, or do we serve kids? And that's the only reason why we bring the increase we ask for in, to get to that number. Now, trying to get whole again with our instructional coaches, seeing the changing needs of societies with social workers, trying to help our teachers out with instructional supply monies, trying to get trainers. Yes, we're trying to provide a quality education. We want to be the choice in this area. When somebody says, has a 5-year-old, and they say, where do I want to send my kid to school? Do I want to send them to a charter school? Do I want to send them to a private school? Do I want to homeschool them? I want there to be no doubt that we offer the best choice. And so that's my goal. And it's going to be my goal as long as they allow me to be the superintendent. Now, did I ask for everything to make that happen? No, I didn't. But I try to make a good first stab at it of what I think is a reasonable request. I also want to echo what Mr. Rogers said. I appreciate this evening tonight and the tone around this table. It's been fantastic, and I want to thank y'all for that.
Something I do want to add real quick, when y'all are looking at it, you'll see a $25,000 decrease in where we were charging tuition. We opted to waive it because it cost us no more to heat a class with 10 kids than it does with 15, but the ADM, average daily enrollment, basically, the state funds us based on the pupil. The money follows the pupil from state and federal. We're taking the gamble. We're starting a promotional campaign. This is why Stokes County Schools is the best you're gonna find. And we're hoping to get some of these from Surrey and the surrounding, Rockingham surrounding counties, not out of state, to get them to put their kids in, because if we can get $8,000 for the child, I'd rather give up the 15, what was it before, Lynette?
The 25,000.
1,500.
1,500, of which 50% was 50% of those that applied were waived, so call it $750 a kid. I'd rather have $8,000 than $750, because it's following the kids. We're trying to fill our classrooms back up, make them more efficient. So, in case you wonder where the 25,000 went.
And more attractive to bring them back in, because we have 700 and some kids and students being homeschooled in our county that their parents choose not to bring them into the public schools. So we want to have a campaign to also bring them from home to the public schools, but we need to make them more attractive to do that as well.
And the question about SROs earlier, we did not put SROs in our budget. And talking with some of the commissioners, talking with the sheriff, the state money that we get for high school SROs, we, of course, funnel that to the sheriff's department. We also apply for a matching grant to provide us extra SROs. But for everything beyond that, it didn't make sense to me for me to ask for money for SROs to give the money to the Stokes County School Board, so then we give it to the sheriff's department. We could cut out the middleman, and the sheriff said he was gonna make that request to phase it in over time. Again, if we wanted to talk about individual coverage, I've talked to Mr. Chairman Nicholson about if we wanted to do that, to go into closed sessions, because it's a safety concern. But, you know, an SRO in a building, 20 years ago, I would have argued and said that that wasn't a need. In 2019, if somebody walks into our building and does harm to one of our kids, it's hard to justify why we didn't have somebody. And so I would be an advocate for that as well.
And you did include, we just didn't include the
yes.
elementary. You make that
We maintained our grant funding, we've maintained all
right.
those.
We just didn't include the elementary.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Maintaining, and obviously we don't want to go into a lot of detail as to what maintaining is, but the middle schools, that's not 100% coverage.
I'd love to go in closed session and tell you how we're covered.
Is that
I'm not
I don't really
asking
want
you
to
to
do,
say
no,
how.
we're not. We're
Okay,
not
that's-
100% covered right now.
Okay.
We're very close to the middle school level.
And the only reason I bring that up is that may be a conversation that we need to have with Sheriff Marshall, because I will tell you that I've had the conversation with him, not to go against, but the conversation I had with him was 2 additional, not 2 additional. So that's something that we can certainly discuss, and we need to discuss that a little bit deeper.
Is that something y'all care to discuss today, or y'all wanna do it some other time?
I'd like to serve president when we have that discussion. If we could, please.
All right. Anybody have anything
I
Oh,
do.
yeah, I got a whole lot more.
Good. How much you got?
Not a whole lot, but I got 3 more topics I wanna go through with
I've
everybody.
got 3 also. You go.
Me first?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, first of all, on the fund balance for the school system, I'm in favor of you guys having a reasonable fund balance. It is by statute an extension of our fund balance, but it's, I guess we need feedback from you about what that number is, because, you know, given the day that you may have an emergency, the county commissioners can have a 6-week decision process before you get an answer. So for that reason, I think you guys need to have a reasonable fund balance to address emergencies and so forth. And I noticed in your capital thing, 100K of that's your first line item is, so that's part of the fund balance, right? I mean, you consider that part of whatever?
That's part of our overall, yes,
Overall
that's
fund
dedicated to capital. The others in our current expense, which could be moved to capital in an emergency, but
Yeah.
we
However
also-
you want to define it,
yes.
but I just think you need a reasonable, so if you have a catastrophic problem, you can come and we would help, but for normal kind of business, if you could kind of give us some feedback on what that reasonable number would be, then I would be supportive of doing that. Second thing on SROs, I put on my 5 things on my card when I was running for election, one of them was school security, my top 5 priorities. And I made it real clear that my position was that there should be an SRO in every school, because I couldn't explain if something happened in the school that didn't have one, why that school was less important than another school. I realize there's funding implications with that, but to me, this is a really critical issue in this day and time versus, like you said, what it used to be. So, I agree with Commissioner Yance. I talked to the sheriff too. I think we all probably talked. We should just all went talking at one time. We're not allowed to do that. But what the feedback I got from the sheriff was that he didn't tell me he was against having one in every school. He said he didn't have graduates from the BLET or the sheriff's school or law enforcement training available really to staff him if he had the positions right now. So I think that was probably why he was thinking of phasing them in. And so I think it'd be good. I will support whatever you and the sheriff recommend kind of jointly, I think is what we need to do. But I'm sticking with that position that I would fund one in every school if that's what your request ends up being. If you guys have a different approach, because I consider you and the superintendent and sheriff the experts that give us recommendations on what to do, then I'll support that position. But I will not change my position that I would support funding for one in every school, whatever it took to do that. And then the last subject is a 4-cent fund. That was used to remodel and build new schools, the 5 projects I think that are in it, plus the operational expense for Poplar Springs and for Site Tech. That's what that model was put together for. We had Doug Carter up here, our financial advisor for the county, who has been for some time. He and I actually put together that 4-cent fund idea because we knew we had to raise taxes to build those schools and do the remodeling. And by putting it in the 4-cent fund, we gave it transparency that the public knew exactly what that funding was going to be used for. And I'm not aware of a single complaint that we raised those taxes to do those schools. I didn't get any, and I don't think the other commissioners I've talked to, because people understood what we were doing with it. Well, if you get a chance, if you're gonna look at any of the videos from the YouTube that we've started doing, I would go back and look at that I think it's our first budget meeting that he was here, right? He talked for about, he and Andrew, his son that works with him, talked for a couple of hours about the model that we used to put together the 4-cent fund. And he was here to basically offer to work with us to update that model, and also I think we kind of had some informal discussions about expanding the use of it, which is perfectly legitimate, because what we did when we put it together, we advertised what it would be used for, but we also said the commissioners have the authority at any time to change the use of that model or expand the use of it, as long as we tell the public what we're doing. And so I think our board during this budget process that's coming up is, I think there's interest in looking at expanding the use of that model, most likely for additional school capital type needs or needs that are related to the school. And this hadn't been done yet. This all has to occur during our budget process. But if we decide to expand the use of that fund, a couple of projects I think that Doug recommended, perhaps we could take all this assessment of all the needs of your schools and roll it up into one big project and use the 4-cent fund for that. I think he also suggested we could lump all the roofs together and make that a separate project and possibly fund it with a 4-cent fund. That fund currently gets revenues from lottery, it gets them from the 4-cent property tax, and it gets funds from paid off debt. And but another funding source we could put in it is additional new debt. So when you talk about big numbers for whatever projects we may need to do with this, then we could use that fund as a, to facilitate the additional debt that we might need if the projects are large enough that we have to borrow money to do them, which is perfectly legitimate. We do it every year. We borrow money every year for financing various aspects of the county. So let me see if I missed any points on that. I do that doesn't sound like a bad idea of maybe, I think we're going to talk about during our budget process assessing the county buildings. I think, Jake, you've got 36,000 or something in there to do that.
35,000 pays for
Yeah.
a 5-year plan on all of ours, but I am talking with Dr. Rice and Pearson Architect
Okay.
on incorporating the schools and what that cost be.
Okay, because we own the school buildings, most of them anyway, they're county buildings too, so even though I don't think we'd want to fund the work on county buildings that are not school out of the 4-cent fund. I think, in my opinion, and we'll see what the rest of the board wants to do, we want to keep that 4-cent fund to be used for school-related purposes. Kind of makes sense, unless somebody has a different idea. But and Doug was here. He said, he said just before he left, we can update this model during your budget process or whatever you want us to do with it, and tell you what kind of debt you'd have to do or what kind of, or looking at other funding sources. But I don't think it's reasonable. I don't think it's reasonable by June 30th for us to ask you to come up with a project of that scope. So, I'm thinking, my thought process in the capital thing is we just do the capital kind of like we've talked about here tonight, 1 year at a time. This is the 1-year plan here, I guess, for next year, and maybe think about shifting shifting a larger type project and an expanded use of the 4-cent fund, especially if it's going to include debt, new debt. Maybe that's something we do in next year's budget, possibly. But anyway, so that's kind of my thought process on the 4-cent fund, and it's all to be determined by what myself and the other 4 of us agree to after further discussion. One other point to make about that. The last thing is, I think we do need a 5-year capital plan. The county needs one, and the school system needs one. And I think as we put those capital plans together, they need to be unconstrained capital plans as far as funding goes. We really need to know what the real requirements are, not based on how much funding's available, but what's the real requirement, no matter how big or small it is. And then we, as decision bodies, will put the constraints on it after we know what the unconstrained 5-year plan looks like. But I agree with Commissioner Walker, and I think several others, that we need to get back to that process. We did that at the same time we put the 4-year, 4-cent model together. We started doing both, asking you guys and the county to do a 5-year capital plan. So just from a smart business, strategic planning process, I think that's a good thing to do. I'll leave that, and we'll see how this comes out with further discussion.
25 minutes.
No, I'm going half as long.
Okay.
As Commissioner Morris. You watch. Don't let him win the length of discussing contest for this evening.
I don't need another meeting now, so.
Oh, okay. Few things, pretty quick, actually. One is, even though there's some confusion, and I don't want to dig too deeply into this, about the teacher supplement, I don't think there's a person on our board who doesn't support properly funding our teacher supplement. If there is, I haven't picked up on it. I think that's pretty well agreed among our board members that it's expected by the teachers to continue funding their supplement properly. My question, back during our other budget process, is how did we get to where we are with this? Why hasn't this been funded properly up to now? What happened? I didn't know. I still haven't figured it out. Why the teachers went that many years with inadequate funding for their supplement? I don't know. But anyhow, that's to me not even a question in our budget. Another thing too is we reference the sheriff. I don't want to try to speak for him. I hope we can have a meeting. Probably needs to be a closed session due to the sensitivity of it, and have him here. So there is a way for all 5 of us here at the same time to talk to him at the same time, do it as a meeting, and see what he has to say. Dr. Rice, when you talk about your funding from the state being manipulated, that's just continuation to me of a trend we've seen happening over the past pretty good number of years. The state squeezes the counties. The only place we have left to go is the taxpayers. They make their budget better by burdening ours. And you're kind of caught in that as well, sounds like. We've had it happen so many times. It's not a pleasant thing to have happen, and the more it happens, I think the more our hackles are raised because of it. We say, how far is this going? When are you guys going to stop doing this to us? But I guess we just need to keep talking to our state representative and our state senator, and hopefully they'll be doing their job for us to try to abate this. Our current tax rate is 74 cents. That's 62 cents property tax, 8 cents fire tax, and 4 cents education. If the 1.11, bless you, if the 1.11 million increase is funded, that's a 3 cent increase on our tax rate. Now, we've had 3 commissioners out campaigning and hearing from our citizens, don't raise our taxes, please don't raise our taxes. So there is the challenge. If we were to decide to fund the 1.11 million increase, that's 3 cents on the tax rate right there. And it also means that over half of the ad valorem is going to schools. Less than half is going to all of the other counties' operations. So that's creating an interesting situation that's probably going to be hard to explain to some of our citizens, I think everyone values a good education for our kids. You ask anybody, do you want our kids to have a good education? Absolutely. You're never gonna get a no on that. But the mechanics that we have to deal with is how do we get all these pieces to fit together in a way that's best, a way that makes most sense. I better start slowing down, hadn't I? The other thing too, is I have witnessed personally skipping in action on our board. I won't go into a lot of detail, but usually it's a matter if someone prefers something, they don't skip on their pet projects. It's anyone else's they want to skip on. But I've seen it happen in ways I thought restricted our county's progress. And I'm looking for whatever we do in Stokes County, I want this message to be received by the surrounding counties and others in the state. Stokes County is really trying to do it right. We're looking for quality in what we do. We can't afford the biggest and best always. We're a small county. What, 46,000 and change citizens in our county? Compared to Forsyth County is 400, Rockingham is 177, Surrey is about 80. We're a small county, and our resources are restricted compared to many other counties around us. So our challenge is to do the best we can with what we have to work with. That's about half, so I'll stop.
Hey, Mr. Walker. Commissioner Yance, Commissioner Mendenhall, anyone have anything to add? Well, do we feel like we need another meeting?
I would say definitely include everybody when you meet with the sheriff. I think that would be productive.
Is
Personally.
there a date we can all agree on?
Let's pick 2 dates, and then maybe by the time we all check our calendars, one or the other of them will work if we made it straight. I don't have my laptop with me with the calendar on it.
There you go, you can share a calendar with me or two if you want to.
Thank you, sir.
If I was gonna be selfish, I would ask that we wait till after the eighth at least. I've got 4 graduations coming up in 3 nights next week, and so after the 8th, I'll breathe again, if I'm being selfish.
I would like to also put out a request, and that is, I would like for our board to have a chance to work more on the budget, because we've done some, but I don't think we've really gotten down to the nitty-gritty as far as our budget. And I'd like for us to be able to get a little farther along with our budget before we get back together with the school board.
I do.
Definitely
Yeah,
need.
I believe we have another meeting on
We're
the,
close to
we have another on the 4th, is that correct?
And the 5th, and you have a planning board meeting on the 4th, and you have a regular meeting on the 10th.
There's the 11th, which is a Tuesday, second week in June.
You looking at the 11th?
Mm-hmm.
Evening
Yeah,
again as well, okay.
everybody good with that?
Yeah, the Stokes
What
partnership
time?
thing is at noon that day, but otherwise it's open.
Granted, the
May have
sheriff
to cancel
can
my
attend.
office hours when I do that.
What
You
time?
wanna be far away from,
What
looking at
time?
maybe 6 o'clock again, is that good with everyone?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You can have abbreviated office hours.
Yeah.
You'll be here anyway.
I guess the thing we need to make sure is,
Mr. Marshall.
we check to see if Sheriff Marshall can meet with us also on that day.
Are we going to pick another one just in case?
You said 6 o'clock.
I'm not ESP, I think that would work fine.
You
It's
seem
being
very, you seem
visualized.
very intuitive. I like the greatest toward that.
It would need to be advertised as a joint session, will it be advertised as a closed session?
Absolutely.
Do we advertise as both in
Yeah,
case we
that's
need
why I was
to
thinking do
vote?
both and then go into close if we need to.
Yeah, don't think we can really advertise it as a closed session.
No, it has to be
It has to
advertised.
be, it has to start as an open meeting.
And then we'll go on closed.
That's 11.
11.
And the second day we pick
And
the
I
second.
believe that
I
was
think
at
it's on there, we're
6
gonna go
o'clock.
over
Okay,
it.
that's fine.
6 o'clock, correct?
6 o'clock, yeah. Well, for you, 5:50.
Now we're gonna eat, I'll get here early.
today.
Well, hey, yeah.
And a bribe him with pizza.
Don't cry. Shannon gave you the same message she gave everybody else. Be here 5:30 and you are.
I've been gone all day.
Oh, me too. Bless it, bless it.
June 11th, 6 o'clock, everybody's good with it.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to relay some information to other boards. I had a meeting with the Appalachian Regional Commission concerning the water, the sewer grant that this county applied for and got back in 2017, basically when it was finished. And they want to let the school board, well, they were impressed with your early college and what's going on there. They were impressed with the Forsyth Tech. They're impressed with what you were able to accomplish with that amount of money and what you got in that area and what it's looking like. So it was just a follow-up, a final interview on what was done and what was the final outcome of it, and they wanted to let you know that they were really, it was just really, they were really impressed on what Stokes County was able to accomplish in that with their early college and with some tech and what possibly could come in the future and hopefully near future.
Good news to hear.
It is an impressive campus, that's for sure.
I just spoke, I texted with Sheriff Marshall, and he can do the 11th at 6, so we can confirm that.
Good deal.
Your ESP is still working.
I knew it would be, so I'm gonna make a motion, we adjourn, so.
All right, have a motion
That's
to-
for the Board of County Commissioners.
A second.
I'm gonna turn my chair this way, because I can't go home till she says it.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Again, us as a Board of Education, want to thank you all, and we're excited for these very productive discussions, and thank you again for tonight, and look forward to meeting again. I need a motion to adjourn.
Me.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll borrow your ESP down at the gas station and buy some lottery tickets.
Yeah, I was gonna ask